The following program, The Lightning Strike, is sponsored by Mohammed Fahim, and to the extent applicable, their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of NewsWeb Radio Company or its management.
Get ready to be jolted out of the ordinary and into a world where conversations are charged with intensity and facts. The Lightning Strike Talk Radio with your host, Mohammed Fahim, broadcasting live from the heart of the city on Chicago's Progressive Talk Radio, WCPT 820 AM. Welcome to a radio show that charges through the airwaves with an electricity like no other. Here's your host, Mohammed Fahim.
Good morning, folks. Good morning and welcome to WCPT. Welcome to the Lightning Strike. This is your host, Mohammed Fahim. With me in the studio is Ken DeLuke again. And howdy, John Arena is actually on vacation, so he'll not be joining us today. But we have some pretty interesting guests in the studio and obviously a full power-packed hour of the Lightning Strike. The number to call in is 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. That is WCPT. And you can also tune in live on heartlandsignal.com or go to facebook.com/WCPT820, or you can go to our website, which is tlschicago.com. Okay? And coming back to what's happening in the world, you all know what's happening, right? The International Court of Justice came in with some pretty interesting observations about what is happening in the Middle East. And if you want to comment on it, feel free to call in. Again, the number is 773-763-9278. But we have Judge John Andderson, the Honorable John Andderson, in the studio with us today. And also another guest, Zarqa Abid. She is running for Congress in the 15th Congressional District in Ohio. And welcome to both of you. And we'll be talking with Ms. Abid about 9:30 or so. And let's start off with Judge John Andderson. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning, Mohammed. How are you? Thank you for inviting me.
Well, so nice of you to come on a Sunday morning and spend your mornings with us. So right off the bat now, currently you are a circuit court judge.
Correct.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, there are three layers or three levels of courts in state court in Illinois. At the bottom, you have the circuit court, and that is the level of court that most people would be exposed to. If you have a speeding ticket, you would go to the circuit court. If you are getting a divorce, you'd go to the circuit court. And imagine it like a pyramid. So at the bottom is the circuit court. At the very top is the Illinois Supreme Court. There are 7 justices there. And then in the middle is the Illinois Appellate Court. In many states, that would be called the Court of Appeals.
Okay.
So I'm a circuit court judge.
Okay, so does it help me if I know a judge, if I get a traffic court ticket, if I come to your court and you're going to say, hey, I know you, so you're not a bad person, let him go, right?
Well, you certainly look innocent, but given that I know you outside of court, I would probably have to recuse and send the case to a different judge.
Okay, just kidding. So, folks, if you have any questions about the judiciary, we have had about 6 judicial candidates on the show so far. And it is so important. Please remember that the judiciary right now is not just the first line of defense, is probably the most important line of defense for our civil rights in this country at the moment.
It's often the last line of defense.
Yep.
And by the way, I should have pointed out, I'm running for the appellate court. I'm a candidate for the appellate court in the 3rd district, which is 7 counties. It's Will County, DuPage, LaSalle, Grundy, Bureau, Kankakee, and Iroquois counties. But you're right. A lot of the rights that we all thought were carved in stone are under attack. Reproductive rights, the right to vote, the right to read the books you want to read and to love who you want to love. Those rights are all under attack. And in some instances, those attacks are coming through the court system. So judges are often the last line of defense to protect those rights.
So let me ask you this. This is something that I've always been curious about. Most judges are elected, but many of them are appointed also, right?
Yes.
So how good is a system where someone has the authority to appoint somebody who can take their agenda forward?
Unfortunately, there's really not a good way, a perfect way to choose judges. If you're in the federal level, if you're in federal courts, those judges are nominated by the president, and they don't really have any accountability. In practical terms, they don't have accountability to anybody. In Illinois State Court, judges are elected, and so judges do have accountability to the people, and many people think that's important, and there is importance there, but how much accountability to the voters do you want a judge to have? In other words, if you go into court, do you really want a judge to be thinking, how will this case affect my ability to get elected or reelected or retained? You don't really want a judge thinking about those things. So to a certain extent, electoral accountability is a bad thing for judges.
Ken, you have any questions for Judge John Andderson?
I do. Actually, I'm familiar with you, Judge. I've seen you since COVID happened, and a lot of the proceedings went into Zoom calls, Zoom court, and so I have a familiarity of your background. What is your opinion on that technology as it relates to trials?
Well, definitely mixed feelings. I mean, Zoom allowed us to keep moving cases along during COVID. It allowed people to get justice, which of course is central to any democracy. But Zoom is imperfect. It's okay for status hearings and arguing motions and things like that. But when it comes to a trial, when it comes to gauging a person's credibility, their truthfulness, one of the things we look at is a witness's demeanor and how they conduct themselves, how they handle themselves, and Zoom really does not lend itself to that. But I still allow Zoom court for people. For example, if you're a single mom, you wait tables, you can't afford an attorney, I don't want you to have to take a half a day off of work to come sit in my courtroom, sit there for an hour to talk to me for 3 minutes. And so, and if you have a lawyer, I don't want you to have to pay your lawyer, $300-400 an hour to drive an hour to court, sit there for an hour to talk to me for 3 minutes, and then drive an hour back. You're paying for all that time. So I do allow Zoom court really just to help people as a service to people and to save money and promote efficiency.
You brought up a very interesting point just now. Okay, how important is body language of the defendant in a courtroom, and how does that impact your judgment as a judge?
It's critical. Very often, lawsuits and criminal cases come down to he said, she said, who do you believe? And, judges are human beings. We don't have crystal balls. We can't figure out who did what necessarily with 100% accuracy. But we rely on our gut, and we make credibility determinations, and it's much easier to make a good credibility determination when you can actually lock eyes with a person and look at how they conduct themselves, how they handle themselves. If you just have a voice on the telephone or over a Zoom call, it's almost impossible to do that.
Kind of difficult, right? So, folks, we have Judge John Andderson in the studio with us today. He is a circuit court judge, and he's running for the Appellate Court. And when is the election coming up now, in March?
There's a primary on March 19th.
Right.
Early voting starts February 8th.
Wow.
Yes, it's going to be upon us. And I do have a primary opponent. And then in the general election, the person running on the other side is a guy who used to be a law clerk for Clarence Thomas, and he's very involved in the Federalist Society.
Okay.
And I think he seems like a rather extreme sort of person.
Let me ask you a question. How do you maintain impartiality and fairness when forced with these high-profile and, more importantly, politically sensitive cases?
Well, first of all, the judiciary cannot exist without the trust and confidence of people. And I wear a black robe. I don't wear a blue one. I don't wear a red one. So when I go into court, my focus is on the facts, the law, and I use my experience and judgment to reach a just decision. And I really don't pay a lot of attention to whether it's a high-profile case or a low-profile case. I try to treat them all the same. But, you always want to make sure that people get a fair shake. I've had a lot of challenges in my life, and so it's always important to me that people know going into court that they're going to be treated fairly.
So speaking of challenges in your life now, Judge, I know that you had a rough childhood. You were not the smartest kid in school, and you really had to overcome some challenges.
Well, I don't know if I was the smartest kid in school or not, but I definitely was not the best student.
Okay.
I didn't want to be there. I went to Lincoln Way High School in Lenox, and candidly, I shouldn't say this, but I barely graduated. I had to go to summer school every year, including the summer after I was supposed to graduate. I just didn't want to be there. I don't know if it was boredom or immaturity, but yeah, I mean, my parents had some struggles. My mom was a school bus driver. My dad was a landscaper, and at one point we lost our house to the bank, and I was homeless for a bit. I lived on my friend's couch in a cockroach infested apartment. There were cockroaches in there, I can tell you. And something happened in my life. My uncle was murdered, and that actually had a profound impact on my life. It caused me to go back and reevaluate the changes I was making, and I ended up going back to school. And now I have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree from University of Illinois Springfield, an MBA from Notre Dame. I have a law degree from UIC and a second law degree from Duke. So I feel like I'm very much a product of second chances.
Okay. When I got my first bachelor's, I got like 2 bachelor's and a master's, and then I got admitted into a PhD program in Australia, and my dad kicked me out of the house. He said, you're killing yourself by degrees, go make a living. Okay. So education is useful, no doubt about it, but what do you think about our current education system? I mean, it's become a diploma mill now. A lot of these colleges, like when I was running for office, one of the things that I was focusing on was education reform. A lot of these people, especially the 4-year colleges, are not worth the money that people are paying for it. What do you think?
Well, as somebody who is 53 years old and still owes student loans for my own education, I think student loan debt is one of the biggest problems we're facing in America, and I also think that college costs are just exorbitant. I have my older 2 children go to University of Missouri, and I walk around and I look at the campus, and some of these dorms are like the Taj Mahal. I mean, I lived in a dorm that was just a dump, and now they're building these dorms with a Starbucks inside. I never had something like that. But the real problem, as I see it, is student loan debt. I know people that have left law school with $100,000 in debt. They make their payments, and now they owe $200,000, and that debt is going to be impossible to get out from under.
It's ballooning up, right? And that is something that is of huge concern to me, folks. So it's about 9:17. You are tuned in to WCPT AM 820, Chicago's progressive talk radio station. I'm your host, Muhammad Fahim. With me in the studio again, my co-host, Ken DeLuke. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back. Also, our person of the week at the end of the show is Susan Holman. She is a communications expert, and Susan will be talking about how can parents communicate with their kids in today's social media world when everything is emojis. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be back on the other side of the break. If you need to call in, 773-763-9278 is the number.
Welcome back to the Lightning Strike with Muhammad Fahim.
Good morning, folks, and welcome back to the Lightning Strike. The number to call in is 773-763-9278. With me in the studio today is a congressional candidate, Zarqa Abid. She will be coming on shortly. And also Judge John Andderson, who's running for the Appellate Court in Illinois now. And Michelle Alfano has been a prison advocate, and we've been following up on Eric's case for the last few shows now. Eric Strang, who's been in prison in Iowa. And Michelle has a question for the Judge Anderson over here. Michelle, good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, Judge Anderson, good luck on your campaign, and good morning.
Thank you.
This is my concern. Yes, thank you. This is my concern. I am focused on teenagers because my training is I was a high school teacher for a long time, and I sit in court sometime and I see kids who are 19 years old getting sentenced to 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades. And I know many people who have these decades-long sentences, and it's my feeling that long sentences focus so much on punishment, but don't create safer communities. They're also so expensive for taxpayers. So I'd like to know where you weigh in on that. And when you have a 19-year-old in front of you, how do you decide whether to go with 10 years, 20 years, 30 years?
Well, first of all, I think our prison system does have some severe problems and is in need of overhaul. I don't hear a lot of criminal cases. I do hear some, but mainly I hear civil cases. But to your question, we spend probably $50,000 or $60,000 a year per prisoner. Mm-hmm. Many of these prisons, at least in Illinois, are being run or operated by private companies. And I think that's a real problem. And many of the people that are being sent to prison are not really being rehabilitated. They're not being educated. They're not being set up for success once they get out. Obviously, many people who are incarcerated should not be incarcerated forever. They have to, they pay their debt and they should get out. But we want them to have a productive life when they get out. And so I think we need more educational services, more work training, so that they can contribute to society when they get out. If I have a young person in front of me who's made a mistake, to be honest with you, we all make mistakes when we're young people, and many of us, there but for the grace of God, go us. Mm-hmm. But one of my favorite things to do is to talk to young people who are on the verge of maybe not graduating from high school or not finishing school, and I want them to know it's a really long race, and they're just on the first lap. My message is not you can be a goofball and be a judge, or you can make mistakes like this and be a judge, but it's a long race. There are educational opportunities out there. There are community colleges that have open enrollment policies. You can go to a community college for 2 years, and once you graduate from there, they're not going to ask. You can transfer to a four-year college. They won't even ask you for your high school transcripts. Mm-hmm. And so I want people to know, young people to know that they have those opportunities to go to college even when they think they don't. And so when we can focus on education for young people rather than locking them in cages, in the long run, that is better for society as a whole, and it makes all of us safer.
Absolutely. And we've got another caller calling in with a question for Judge Anderson. You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
All right, peace be with you. My question to the judge is, first of all, establish, I do realize prosecutors have a job to do, and that bad people, criminals, should be punished in some way or another. And this is not to throw a blanket over all prosecutors, because they have a job to do. But in the history of the criminal justice system, there have been prosecutors who knowingly, willfully, broken the law to get convictions to stack their numbers. And the problem is, in most states, prosecutors have immunity for anything they do. What is your position about a prosecutor who breaks the law, knows he breaks the law, and it's been proven that he broke the law? Should he really get immunity from what he's done, especially when he sends people to prison for something he knows they didn't do?
Well, first of all, I think it is important to have a certain level of immunity for prosecutors who are just doing their job in good faith. But I think we need to remember that a prosecutor's job is not to secure convictions. It's not just to win in court. It's to do justice. And there have been instances, such as the Rolando Cruz case from DuPage County years ago, where, and I don't remember the details of it. It was a long time ago. But as far as I can recall, prosecutors actually presented evidence they knew to be false. And in a situation like that, I think they step outside of their, they take their prosecutor hat off, and I think that they should, in fact, be potentially liable for whether it be criminal conduct or that their law licenses should be re-examined when they do something like that. But again, I'm just talking about the most extreme kind of misconduct committed by a prosecutor. If somebody is just making good faith arguments and doing their job, then I don't think that they should face any consequences for that. But when they knowingly present evidence that they know is false or that it's misleading to the court, I think that's a serious problem.
Thank you so much, for calling in with your question. Thank you, Judge Anderson, for responding to the question in such a wonderful way. Folks, again, Judge Anderson is running for the Appellate Court, and if you don't mind, if you want to share your itinerary, are you going to be having any fundraisers, any kind of activities that people can come and meet you in person?
Or is there a website or something they can look you up at?
Yeah. When it comes to fundraisers, judges are not allowed to solicit or accept or really talk about fundraisers. I do have a website. It's judgejohnanderson.com. We've got some videos that we just put up there not long ago that are really getting a great response. One of them involves a young woman that I met years ago who was her house caught on fire, and I had put together a fundraiser to help her and the other folks that lived in the house. It's a really touching and powerful video that she made. We probably could have made a 20-minute video with her. She just was such a powerful speaker. Unfortunately, she kept breaking down into tears in the middle of the video. We kept having to stop and restart. Okay. But it's very touching. I do have a Facebook page also. It's judgejohnanderson.com. Excuse me, it's Judge John Anderson. And I wasn't being self-important when we made it Judge John Anderson, but if you just search for John Anderson, you're going to find a bazillion of us out there.
Oh, yeah. I've been there.
Very common name.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'd love to have you come back once the primaries are over, and then you're in the final stretch. Again, folks, Judge John Anderson in the studio with us today on WCPT 8:20 a.m. Chicago's Progressive Talk radio station. We'll take a quick break and we'll be back with Zarqa Abid, who is running for Congress in Ohio's 15th Congressional District. Stay tuned. If you have any questions, again, the number to call in 773-763-9278. We'll take a quick break and we'll be back with our second guest of the morning.
Thank you.